This is a standalone video on jealousy, sympathy, the human condition, how to cope with it. You do not need to have seen any of the prior videos on this channel to pick up what I'm putting down. I do think that jealousy is a very important instinct. I think it's a very important psychological and social factor in life on Earth as we experience it, on the one-to-one level of human interactions, and when you scale it up and look at how our society and culture operates collectively as a whole. Jealousy is a big deal. And I feel I have something to offer in talking about my analysis of jealousy and how to cope with it, even though I myself do not experience jealousy. Really brief digression on that. Come from a large family. My father had 9 kids, so it was possible for me to compare myself to a lot of other people who had a lot of genetic material in common with me, but who were profoundly different in many other ways, including this instinctual experience of jealousy. As the years went by, of course, I also learned this lesson in getting to understand the psychology of my girlfriends, who, of course, later became my ex-girlfriends. I got to see this play out in the workplace with coworkers, how they experienced and acted out jealousy, how important a psychological fact this was in their lives, and how really alien it was to me, and me having to understand, why don't I think that way? Why don't I feel that way? When for them, this was very immediate. This was as immediate to them as their experience of color, where they don't look at something and question, is that red or is that orange? They apprehend the color right away. In that same sense, they were having a jealous, instinctual response to things the moment they saw them. One of my ex-girlfriends in particular, that was really striking. Many, many people I've known are like that. I'm not like that. So to some extent, in talking about this, I'm giving advice that's got to be terrible. Because it's like someone giving you advice on weight loss who's never had the experience of gaining and losing weight. I'm aware of my limits. I'm aware this is an area in which it's difficult for me to articulate myself. But it's interesting to me that I was misunderstood philosophically by one of the people in the comment section for my prior video. And I think the misunderstanding is really worth addressing in and of itself. This person misinterpreted my advice as if my point was that when you meet someone who's gorgeous, someone who's very, perhaps who you feel is superior to you in terms of their aesthetics, their strength, their body, that you should shift into appraising them jealously in other categories where you might have an advantage. I totally understand why this person misunderstood my advice that way. So the hypothetical scenario is here: you meet someone who's a model, a fitness model or bodybuilder at the gym, and then you switch into a mode of shrewishly imagining, well, they must be inferior intellectually or economically in terms of their success in business or education or reading ancient Greek philosophy or something, right? Now that is, not only can I say that's not what I'm recommending at all, to me, it's inconceivable, or it was inconceivable before I read this, that some would misunderstand what I had to say in that way. Because to me, it's obvious that's just repeating the same error, but under another heading. That's playing the same game, but in a context where you think you can win, right? And I'm saying, no. The whole game is bad and bankrupt and counterproductive and psychologically unhealthy. I think it's not really hard to argue that envy is a counterproductive and pointless, emotional response to the world. What I'm propounding here is the idea that sympathy is an analytical tool, that we shouldn't just sympathize with other people in order to be sympathetic. Sympathy isn't an end in itself, but that sympathy leads to an appreciation of someone in the context of their whole life cycle, what I call life cycle analysis. That it's going to lead you to understand these traits where they may be your superior. They may be more beautiful than you, stronger than you, fitter than you. They may be more intelligent than you. They may be better educated than you. They may be more successful than you. That it's going to let you understand that in the context of their suffering, their struggle, and their effort. I may meet someone who's very successful and has a PhD in Sanskrit. I don't feel jealous. Now, in my case, my specific case of this example, it is literally true that I could have gotten a PhD in Sanskrit, and I chose not to, right? Now, for some people, that would make the jealousy and envy worse, because then they feel regret. Oh, I could have been successful like this person if only I made this choice. No, I don't respond that way at all. And then for other people, they never even considered the option of getting a PhD in Sanskrit, and maybe that makes the jealousy worse. Oh, I could have had this totally different life if I devoted myself to this type of intellectual, historical, and language study, right? The point is, when I see them, And it's not that I switch to like, oh, well, they've got a PhD in Sanskrit, but I can bench press more than them. To me, that's just repeating the same game. That's the same kind of jealousy, but under another heading. You're making the same mistake twice. You're making it worse, right? When I meet this person, and I've met many, many people with PhDs in Sanskrit, I can sympathize with the sacrifices they've made in learning the language, in conforming to the academic system, in going through this process, in gaining this ability, etc., in the pursuit of this form of success that they now have, or this form of educational acquirement. And I can also feel, or I know, that I wouldn't want to go through that same suffering. I wouldn't want to make that same commitment. I wouldn't want to make those same sacrifices. Now, if you do, there's a flip side here. What if you meet someone like that and you don't feel that way? You think, wow, I'd love to do that. I'd love to go through that process. Then the way to relate to them is as a mentor, is as an exemplar, as a positive example you want to emulate, not jealousy, right? But for me, and what I'm talking about mostly here is you meet these people and you think, wow, this guy is putting in twice as much effort at the gym. Maybe he's also using steroids or testosterone booster or whatever as the case. It's going to be, again, this is about particular instances. This is not a generalized or universal situation. I'm not talking about all Sanskrit scholars or all bodybuilders or all professional models. But you see, okay, this is this guy's life. This is his struggle. I'm seeing it in that context. And I can see a lot of things there that to me are rebarbative. They're sacrifices I don't want to make. They're efforts I don't want to make. It's a type of suffering I don't want to undergo. But I can appreciate his accomplishments. I can appreciate what he has done and who he is in this context of his struggle or her struggle, right? And that struggle is not going to be the same in every case. It's not going to be the same for everyone who's a model. It's not going to be the same for everyone who's a Sanskrit scholar. But still, this, I think, creates a natural limit to this jealous impulse, the jealousy instinct. So look, a lot of people misinterpret this way and think that I'm motivated by jealousy when I'm not. There are other YouTubers who are way more successful than I am in the same category that I'm in. So you might ask me, Eisel, do you feel jealous of Unnatural Vegan? Unnatural Vegan has a YouTube channel that I think is in the same category as mine, broadly speaking. She's way more successful than me. She has more viewers than I do. She has a bigger voice, bigger platform. I don't feel jealous of her at all. Now, there are many reasons. I think someone who has the jealous personality type and is stuck in the jealous cycle, if they're in my situation's way, they would think thoughts like, this person is more attractive than me, doubtless true. They might feel this person is more intelligent than me and feel jealous. They might feel this person is less intelligent than me and feel jealous anyway, because then they feel like the fame is or the success is undeserved. Kind of no matter which traits they fasten on in their mind, it's only going to provide more fuel for jealousy, for the jealous instinct. And I believe that is because they're taking these traits, they're isolating them, they're abstracting them. It is, if you like, from my perspective, a type of religious mentality. And what I do is the opposite. I don't see these as isolated traits at all. I'm integrating them into that person's whole life cycle. I'm thinking about this in a way that's sympathetic and analytical. I look at this other channel that's more successful than mine. I can see the struggle. I can see the hard work that got those results, and I don't want to do that hard work. I literally don't want to make a single video sitting and doing a product review and smiling and pandering to the audience, which she's done dozens of times, countless times. I don't want to go through the process that built up her viewership and the way in which she reaches out to people. I don't want to make the kind of phony content she makes. I don't want to do any of the things she does. But again, as I said earlier with the Sanskrit scholar, conversely, if I see that and think, wow, that's just what I want my channel to be like, then I would regard her as a mentor, as an exemplar, as someone I could learn from, as someone who has a lot to teach me, and I'm still not going to feel jealousy. You see that? But seeing her success in the context of that cycle of suffering, striving and suffering and effort, I think really changes how you regard these isolated qualities. You see them in a different way, and I think it's going to change how you feel about them and how you respond to them. Now, somebody else wrote in saying that they think the issue here is the difference between perceiving things as innate qualities versus acquired qualities. That's an interesting theory, but especially when we're talking about human beauty, attractiveness, it's not the same as learning Sanskrit or learning Chinese. Yeah, there are innate qualities. Like whether or not you're born with dyslexia is going to profoundly impact your ability to learn Sanskrit, your ability to learn Chinese, even your ability to learn English and French. There are innate characteristics that matter in language acquisition. There are innate characteristics that matter in how successful your YouTube channel is. But there we're talking about a domain that's mostly about acquired characteristics, effort, and accomplishment. And there's no doubt that in terms of human attractiveness, instead we're predominantly talking about characteristics that really are innate and unearned. Even if you had to work hard to maintain your attractiveness, that's different from trying to achieve it when you start out ugly, when you start out with a deformed face, a deformed body with different aesthetic disadvantages. So there's an interesting point that someone else wrote into me, but I think its salience to this discussion is limited. Now, out of left field for a lot of you here, another thing that I feel is related to this is my own nihilist philosophy. And I don't know to what extent I don't experience jealousy today because of something innate and instinctual in me, and to what extent it's because of my own peculiar philosophy, and it's shaped the way I see the world and the way I feel about these things. Someone commented to me recently, and this will seem totally unrelated philosophically, someone demanded to know why it is that I as a nihilist want to conserve nature intact. Like when I talk about conservation of a forest, I want the forest to basically remain the way it would be without human intervention to the greatest extent possible. There are limits to that. Throw it into the footnotes. We're not going to discuss that in this video. But this person was demanding to know if it was possible for me to do something morally positive and reduce harm, reduce suffering within the forest. If we could have human intervention in the forest that, for example, prevents bears from engaging in cannibalism against other bears, or another example, prevents wolves from killing their fellow wolves, which happens in the wild, which maybe you could prevent by just separating the animals, making sure they're distributed more evenly within this park instead of being clustered together or something. If you could intervene to rob nature of its sting, shall we say, to reduce the amount of suffering, why wouldn't you modify nature? We want to know, especially if you're a nihilist, if you don't believe in nature as some kind of abstract, having some kind of religious value. And part of my answer, this is my whole answer, but one part of my answer would say, look, I have to let you know, I don't believe in your concept of better. When you say better, I feel like you're using a religious concept that I don't believe in and I can't believe in. And that is because there's such a simplification and abstraction from the complexity and richness and suffering of reality. And it's the same thing. If you meet someone at the gym and you just feel that they're better than you just regard this person as better than you. If you meet someone in the PhD program at the university and you just feel that they're better than you, I know jealousy, I'm not saying jealousy is a religious mode of thinking, but I think I've so far just talked about how an analysis and sympathy has to reach outward. I have to look at this person analytically and sympathetically and understand their whole life cycle. But this is one sense in which your analysis has to reach inward. What is it you mean? What is it you're thinking? What is it you're doing when you construe and posit this idea of better? Because it's not something simple and self-evident. This person has their life. They're born with some advantages and disadvantages. They go through these struggles. They made these choices. They have to live with these consequences. And there are elements of risk and regret involved there. There's a lot there to relate to. And you're abstracting from that this resented kernel of better and worse. There's a process there. Philosophical parlance. There's hypostatization there that I think you can, you can break down analytically, psychologically. I think you can overcome that habit, that turn of mind. Okay, guys, I think that's all I've got to say in this video. My advice, again, is not to shift your focus from thinking about someone in the way in which they're superior to you, like, oh, this person's sexier than me or fitter than me, or lives more than me, to a context of thinking of imagining some other ladder of values where they're inferior to you. That is decidedly not my point at all. My advice is directed towards overcoming this creation of ladders of value of people being better than you and you being inferior, these feelings of inferiority, through a type of sympathetic feeling. Because, as I say again and again, I think the primary value of sympathy is as an analytical tool. And in the context of overcoming jealousy, it's an analytical tool, it's an analytical tool that leads us to both a greater understanding of others and, I think, a greater understanding of ourselves.